Well, it is the top of the hour, and I was raised on being on time, and I think maybe I learned some of that while I was at U of H at the Hilton College. So the dean is here. I'm going to introduce myself, Richard Weil. I am the current chair of Eric's Club. We are probably going to move by the time we get everybody signed in here. And it's moving extremely rapidly, close to 400 persons. We're expecting over 400 today. And that is a tribute to you as the students and, of course, our wonderful faculty and leadership of Dean Reynolds. Again, I'd like to thank everybody for their coordination who have helped in getting things started here. I'm very honored to be able to introduce our dean, Dean Dennis Reynolds, who is going to make a few opening comments, and then I'll come back to myself and we'll get the presentation going. So Dean Reynolds, if you would please. Thank you.
Mr. Weil, thank you for your kind words and thanks for putting all this together. Watching the counter is it's outstanding. So first, I want to thank Eric's Club. We are Zoom licensed from the college. We could accommodate 300 people. Never in my wildest dreams did I think we would be having meetings with more than 300, but then last month with the Eric's Club board, I think a couple people mentioned Richard certainly was one of them, saying, well, what if we have 500? So we said, well, let's get a bigger license, and Eric's Club very generously funded that. So we can accommodate now 500 people at this call. And who knows, maybe next year we'll maybe need to boost it up again. This is a good problem to have. So Eric's Club continues to lead the way and be kind of the example of what Hilton College is. So I want to thank all of you and the students. Please look to these people. They are your future, and they are who we want you to be in the future. So big shoes to fill, but exciting. And I also want to say that this has been, it's a little redundant. It's been a tough year. I mean, it's been difficult for our industry, for the academic world. It's been terrible, but our students have prevailed. It's funny, our attendance rates in classes, with most of our classes being online, our attendance is actually higher than it was in the past. So I think students are eager and just wonderful. We're blessed to have fantastic students who then become fantastic alumni. And we've also embraced it. Last March, when the pandemic really hit hard, we just kind of braced and we went to all online classes and we were just scrambling. But after a couple months, we saw an opportunity. We saw chances to change the college in a way that would prepare us for a better future. And we've done that. And I want to do a shout out to our IT superstar, Gautam Taneja. We've now decided to upgrade all our classrooms. They're big classrooms. And I was just told last week that S104, where we would normally be meeting this morning, has become the new standard for high flex classrooms for the entire university. So thanks to the Hilton Foundation and Gotham's expertise, it's costing about $50,000 a classroom, but come fall, we will be ready. It's pretty amazing and exciting. We're just doing great things. Eric's Club Center for Student Success, we break ground in just a couple weeks. So this is very exciting. So a year from now, when we meet face to face, I'm excited for everyone to see the big sign out front. And that's pretty exciting. The hotel project, for those of you who have been to campus, there's a big ugly blue fence surrounding our entire college right now with big signs saying, yes, we're open, don't go away, come back. And it's a sign of the future. It's a sign of what we're going to do. And I'm just terribly excited because we're setting the standard for the future. Our college in just a couple years will be completely different. And we will really be leading the pack in terms of hospitality education around the world. So just to wrap up, I want to thank Eric's Club. You guys are such great supporters. And I'm blessed. I have the best job in the world. You guys have heard me say that a lot. We have the best students, the best faculty, the best staff, the best alumni, the best supporters. We're just blessed. And it's a nice situation to have and nice to be a part of it. So thank you all. And Aylwin, I'm really excited about your speech today. But Mr. Weil, please take it away.
Thank you very much, Dean. And a comment on the chat room said, and I agree, we also happen to have the best dean. And that's true. And that is true. And thank you so much. And I am representing roughly 20 Eric's Club or more members that are on this virtual presentation today. So I'm thrilled to be able to provide our students a little bit of information about Eric's Club. Eric's Club was founded in 2003 by Dr. Clinton Rapole, who is also a member of Eric's Club and is on this virtual presentation. If you want to scroll through, you'll see Dr. Rapole, Clinton Rapole, and we have so much to be thankful for him and his leadership. And there he is. I see him coming up on my screen. The purpose of Eric's Club is to promote the mission of the Hilton College at the University of Houston, and by building a legacy of student inspiration and alumni connectivity, as well as to provide a network of support and resources for the college. Eric's Club members are the industry's seasoned members of the more than 7,600 alumni worldwide, and being involved and being committed to our industry and, of course, our college. The lecture series puts a personal spotlight on one of our members and, of course, our speaker. And their story becomes a source of inspiration for students and alumni attending the lecture. Our speaker and Eric's Club members are truly a testament to what the Hilton College graduates can and do achieve. Eric's Club members are elected to Eric's Club based on their qualifications, having been a graduate of the college for more than 20 years from graduation, including baccalaureate, master's, or doctor graduates conferred by the Conrad Hilton College, and importantly, being an owner or an executive officer in their firm, business, or employment. Eric's Club's financial contributions over the years have been significant, as the dean talked about the success for student success. Eric's Club, I want to give an incredible shout out to Doug and Holly Brooks for not only serving as a current regent of the university, proud member of Eric's Club, but an enormous contributor to the Center for Student Success. Eric's Club has also provided financial contributions to Alumni Hall and the Robert Ralston Scholarship. Last spring in 2020, we postponed our spring lecture, of course, due to COVID and the pandemic. But today we celebrate our 2021 spring semester lecturer. And following our featured speaker's presentation, we will have a Q&A session that will be facilitated, that I will facilitate through the chat feature of this virtual presentation. And I believe Dr. Back is also going to help me to organize some of this. As time permits, we will get to as many questions as possible following the session. We will conclude the session around 11:15, and then I will pivot over to Dr. Back. And then at that point, we will move and coordinate to our 4 outstanding breakout sessions. So now, without further ado, and we're probably right on time here, I turn to Mr. Kelly Roberts, who was our fall 2020 semester speaker, in which we had about 275 people participated last fall. It was enormous, and what a success that was. Kelly is the Chief Administration Officer of the Hospitality and Gaming for Landry's Restaurants, Inc. Kelly, thank you again for your wonderful presentation last fall. It was fantastic. And please, if you would, introduce the Spring 2021 featured Eric's Club's Spring Lecturer. Kelly?
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. It's a real honor to introduce Aylwin Lewis to you. He's had an amazing 40-year career in both the restaurant industry and the retail industry. He's a native Houstonian, and he graduated in 1976 with both a BA and a BS from U of H. And then after he had started his career, he came back to University of Houston and got an MBA in 1990. A few of his positions during his career, he was COO of Pizza Hut for several years, which led to him being president and COO of Yum Brands for several years. He left the restaurant industry for a while and moved into retail and worked as president and CEO for Kmart, and that followed with president and CEO of Sears, and returned to the restaurant industry and was chairman and chief executive officer for Potbelly for a number of years, where he retired a few years ago. He's also served on numerous board of directors. A couple of names are icons in the hospitality industry: Marriott Hotels and also Disney. He was honored by Nation's Restaurant News with the Golden Chain Award. And in 2015, University of Houston Alumni Association presented him with the Distinguished Alumni Award. He's moved back to Houston, and he's still involved with the University of Houston. He's currently the vice chairman of the Board of Visitors, and he also is the chairman of the Third Ward Economic Empowerment Task Force. So he continues to serve his university, and it's my privilege to introduce him to you this morning.
Thank you very much. It's quite an honor. First, I want to say thank you to Dean Reynolds for this opportunity. Steve Goodman, 2 years ago, asked me to be the speaker for 2020. And obviously, this pandemic caused that not to happen. And fortunately, Steve invited me back for this morning. Richard took up the mantle, and I really appreciate his time of helping us get prepared for this conversation this morning. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say thank you to Lisa Cyber for her help from an administrative standpoint. What I'd like to do today is talk to you about my personal journey, which would include my business career, and then talk about 5 life lessons that I've been able to kind of glean from this tremendous journey of mine. Aylwin Lewis, born and raised in Houston, Texas. I would say from until the 6th grade, I lived in Third Ward in the CUNY Homes projects, public housing. Went to public school. Junior high was Cullen Junior High, Jones High School. As was mentioned, did graduate from University of Houston in '76. Master's degree, MBA in '90. In between that, I got a Master's of Human Resource Management from Houston Baptist University. Now, my motto, my personal motto is be prepared and show up. And so much of trying to be successful and navigating your life is the preparation you bring to it. And I always found the more prepared I was, the better results. And then show up to me just means that, if you're responsible for a position or a meeting, you show up and you bring all of your talent, all of your expertise and all of your experience to that encounter, so you can try to make the encounter as positive as possible. My personal persona through life has been a student for life. And one of the things I always like to say to young people is that your education from a university, when you're fortunate to finish that, gives you the keys of how do you continue to learn lifelong. But it's the start when you finish your education to the rest of your life, and trying to be a student and acquire knowledge as you go along is so important. And for me, it has been very important. And with the internet today, how you acquire knowledge is strictly up to you and your taste and your preferences. I personally did a lot with formal education, but I was also a very voracious reader. The last 6 years, I've been all ebooks, so I can travel with them. Before I used to travel, I'd take a ton of books on vacation and my music. And so my personal suitcase was always with books and music. My attitude for my life is just gratitude. I'm 66 years old. The life that I've been able to lead, I had no right to expect that being born in Houston in 1954, I could live this life. And so I'm tremendously grateful for everything that's happened to me and the tremendous people who have helped me on my journey. You can't achieve anything in life without folks helping you out. My major influences from a personal standpoint obviously starts with parents. Albert Lewis and Eddie Bell Lewis. Although we were poor, we had tremendous love. Dad got up every morning at 4:30, out the door at 5:30, worked 3 jobs to make sure he could provide for the family. He was a laborer. He also, though, was self-taught. He was a deacon in our church. He was superintendent of Sunday school. Mom was the linchpin of everything, taught us values, be independent, don't take shortcuts, don't back up to the pay window. She used to always say, I don't care what you decide to be, I just want you to be the best at it. And education was very important. In fact, during summer vacation, she would give us reading assignments. And even though we're poor, they found the money to make sure we had Life magazines and Look magazines and the Weekly Reader. And so education was definitely the way that my folks felt that we could elevate ourselves out of our socioeconomic situation. I have 2 sisters that were tremendous in my life, continue to be. My older sister, 3 years older, she got to college first, and as she would bring home her college books, I would steal them and read them. And so tremendous influence on philosophy for me and religion for me. And then lastly, my wife will be 38 years in June. I've been devoted to my career. She's been devoted to raising the kids and the family. Without her, my success would not have been possible. I never had to worry about the household, never had to worry about, in fact, there were years I had no clue my take-home pay. She could have stole me blind, and money was always there. We always had an annual budget that she managed. She was a CFO and the CEO of the household, and even when I got to great positions, she would come home and say, you're not the CEO here. And I've been retired for 3.5 years, and I've definitely learned that fact, that it is her household, and I've had to adjust. On the professional level, it's just been I had a marvelous 40-year career from 1977 to 2017. I spent a year when I graduated at the University of Washington. I got a BA in literature and a BS from Hilton. And I thought I was going to be a college professor and write great American novels. And so I got accepted at the University of Washington. It had a terminal PhD program. I spent that year completing all the coursework, 42 quarter hours. Came home for the summer, and I was on a fellowship. It's like, I'll make some money using this business degree. So this HRM degree. And so I joined Jack in the Box for the summer. And the goal was to work 12 weeks, make money, and go back and finish my doctorate. And 2 weeks into it, I realized this was my profession. And I started off as assistant manager trainee at Jack in the Box. Actually, the Jack in the Box is located at 610 and Stellar Link. I don't think it's there anymore. And ended up my career as a CEO of a company. It was quite a ride. I would say everything that I have materially, I owe to this industry. Most of the friends I've made in my lifetime have been because of this industry. And it fulfilled a need in me to help others, to serve customers, to help teach other young people, to open doors that could remain open. I had 4 great mentors in my career that I always like to highlight. First was Bob Nugent at Jack in the Box. He came in as the chief marketing officer, ended up being CEO and chairman of the company. I got introduced to him midway early in my career. I was running 8 restaurants in North Houston. The company had gone through tremendous turmoil. And Bob came in to talk to us about how he was going to change and lead the direction of the company. And there was about 40 of us in the room. And before then, if anyone came from San Diego, they came and it was very formal. You didn't ask questions. You sat very rigid. They had a deck that they would go through. Back in those days, you had acetates that you showed on the overhead projection. Kids have no clue what that's about. And the goal was, if you're out in the audience, you just wanted to get through it with just still breathing, because you didn't want to cough, you didn't want to move, because that would possibly be a black mark. And what was interesting about Bob, he came in, coat and tie jacket, but he took off a jacket, rolled his sleeve, and said, for the next 2 hours, I'm going to tell you about how we're going to change our company. He had no notes, and it was just a tremendous impression on me. At the end of that meeting, where he answered every question, gave us all the details, was so giving. It's like, man, that's how I want to be when I grow up in business. So I had a long-term relationship with Bob, and he was definitely influential. Second guy was Kyle Craig. I met when I went to KFC. He was president of KFC USA. What I learned from Kyle was that good guys could finish first at top of organizations. Still wasn't clear to me that you could be true to yourself and be a tremendously decent guy. He was tremendously decent, giving, emotion on his sleeves, very personable, very open, very accessible. Probably the most important person in my career is David Novak. I met David when he became president of KFC. We had a long-term relationship. David taught me so much, one from a marketing standpoint, a direct mentor. He really helped elevate the role of culture in an organization and how to teach culture and how to drive it down to the front line. How do you ensure that success is attention to culture as well as attention to the hard stuff? You say the hard stuff and the soft stuff is simultaneously important. And then the last guy I would say is Andy Pearson. Andy was the chairman when we got spun off from PepsiCo and became Tricon and then eventually Young Brands. And he's the smartest man I've ever met. He's been a long time president of PepsiCo. And then he went and taught at the Harvard Business School, a course on general management. And he was just so wise. He was late in life, 73, 74, but so smart, so exacting in results. And I would always take him out quarterly and spend time in the most pressing problem we had in the company to get his brain around it. And then the next day I would take him and so he could spend a day with an up and coming talent in the company and get his assessment on what that development plan could be. And I would say mentors are so important. And for me, because I had these four people and others as mentors, I always very open to mentoring others in the organization. In fact, as I grew in the organization, I would have 3 or 4 mentees a year. And it's amazing. It was a great way to learn what was going on in the organization, but it's also a way to help folks develop. And we had a very interesting program, put a contract together, and it's like, we'll meet on these terms and I'll let you drive the agenda. What do you want to learn from me? And how can I help you in your career? For me, art and science, the combination of that is what's important in life. And I think in dualities, and my goal has been with my career was, can I get a harmonic bond between the art and the science of life? The science is kind of the details, the hard stuff, the processes, formulas, and the art is the imagination, the creativity, the light that inspires us. It's the human dimension. It's the EQ of companies. And when you can combine the two of those, you have a shot to have a complete organization and a complete enterprise. When I was managing a business in Southern Cal, I had a admin assistant who said, you're a talented executive, but you really should plan out your career and do it in series of 5 years and think about what do you need to do to get to that next level. And I was running 45 restaurants out in California. So I was a regional job. And boy, I took that advice to heart from Lita. And what I did is put down series every 5 years, what position do I want to have in my career? But more importantly to me was, okay, so what results what do you have to accomplish from a results standpoint? What do you have to learn? Who do you have to develop? And I still have remnants of that plan that I started then, obviously would update it. And it's amazing once I put that on paper and worked on the results, what do you have to learn? Who do you have to develop? Who do you need to meet? It's amazing how my career flowed similar to the path that I desired. The positions were awesome. I will tell you that there were times where I got stuck and I thought, I'm never going to be more than a regional manager. There are times when positions happen very fast. I would say in the 40 years, Half of those was spent at a senior vice president level and in the C-suite. The first breakthrough of that was senior vice president of ops services at KFC. That led to a stint of being a chief marketing officer for KFC, and that was a career-defining move. PepsiCo was all about marketing. Operators were like, just shut up and execute. The fact that let me as an operator spend a year in a marketing job and shooting commercials and working with the agency and understanding the big brand and how you drive it, it changed my life completely. I eventually went back to operations, but going through that marketing assignment just elevated how I thought about the business, and the combination of great ops and great marketing and great branding is just so important to drive the company. The other key thing that helped me in my career was the MBA from Bauer. Went through the executive MBA. At the time, I was running about 120 restaurants in Southeast Texas, based out of Houston. So it was a fairly big job. In fact, the president of the company, Bob Nugent, came in and visited me, and because they sponsored a degree, and said, listen, over the next 2 years, your goal is to get this MBA. And if your results slip, we got your back. And I was very grateful for that conversation, but there's no way in the world I was going to let my results slip while I got the education. But it was a tremendous exercise of effort, because you're running a business and you're also trying to get this MBA. And although the executive MBA made it easy for us in terms of you didn't have to stand in line to register, your classes was all planned out, it was accelerated, you met on alternating Fridays and Saturdays, but the work was important. They made it known to us at the outset, this is not a training exercise, this is a degree. And the hallmark of that, you had study groups, and the 6 of us were the only intact study group that graduated in 2 years. And it was important for that study group to really happen. Marvelous career, tremendous work, tremendous help from folks. What I would say I brought to the party was the willingness to be open, not to be closed off, the ability to work with people. And I absolutely love managing teams and putting teams together. And then the willingness and showing the ability of how to make money. And so I'll go through some of the life lessons that were important to me throughout this career. The first one I would say is values. Being a value-centered person is the most important part of my life and the most important part of my career. Values are important because they define your moral compass. They help you understand how you should personally behave. They give you boundaries on what's acceptable. And as you grow in a company, it's important that those espoused values match what's really how the values are actually happening in real time. And the goal of a leader is saying, if there's a gap, how do I close the gap between the espoused values of an organization and how we really behave? It's important to go public with values. That's one of the things I learned from Novak. It's like, go public with your values and ensure that the organization holds you accountable. Because once you go public, you have little room to deviate. And once you go public with the values, then it becomes an open invitation to everybody else in the organization to behave this way. Ultimately, joining a company, if you decide to go that route, you need to match your personal values with the values of the organization. That way, it allows you to bring your whole self to work. There's a list of values, but I'll give you the ones that are important to me. Integrity, stops and starts there. Honesty, the word is your bond. If you make a promise, you die trying to get that promise done. The minute you think you can't get it done, you go to that person, you go to the organization and say, gee, I can't get it done. Here's why, but here's what we can do. Without integrity, nothing else is impossible. It stops and starts with the integrity and holding yourself accountable. I just moved back to Houston with that job of 120, and the ink hadn't really dried on the mortgage. And I got a call from this boss who turned out to be a good boss, but it was the end of my first week, and the period was closing. It was time to turn in inventory. He calls me up and says, I know this is your first month here, actually your first week, but it's the period in inventory. And why don't you hold it back a couple of days so we have a couple more days of sales? And that way it'll guarantee that the inventory is lower and it'll probably meet the target. And I didn't say anything at that call. I said, boy, let me get back to you. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, here I am. I've moved the family. I got this new mortgage. I got this new job. It's kind of a dream job back in my hometown. And here I am getting ready to lose it. But with the integrity piece, the message is I called them back up and just said, gee, I'm sorry I gave you the impression that I'm one of those people that will cheat. I said, I'm just not. And, you know, with the inventory piece, it's going to be what it's going to be. But what I'll guarantee you that under my watch, we'll manage inventory very well. And because once you get on that carousel of cheating, you can never get off. And he backed off and said, oh, okay. I'm glad you told me. And so I understand where you're coming from. But integrity allowed me to do that. Hard work was important. A work ethic, you could be smarter, you could be more talented, but you wasn't going to outwork me. I once had a conversation with the chairman of PepsiCo. Don Kendall was the first chairman of PepsiCo. I happened to meet him. I was early in my career, and he said, everybody's even to 9 to 5. What happens before 9 and what happens after 5 determines your personal greatness. And that was just great advice. The work ethic. And in order for things to be great, I think it's important you bring the effort. And so hard work, accountability. If it's assigned to you and you accept it, then you're accountable. When you at the top of your organization, everything in that organization is your responsibility and your accountability, and you can't run from it. Good, the bad, and the ugly. If it happens, then you have to take the accountability, and then you have to ensure that it becomes right. And in a food business, the most important thing we can do is vouchsafe that our products are safe. And if you're ever in a situation where you have a foodborne situation, the number one thing is not profit. It is not saving your butt. It's like, I got to make sure the product is safe for my customers. I got to make sure the environment is safe for employees. And that's what has to guide you in those situations. Positive energy. No one wants to work for Grunt Bunny. Don't want Grunt Bunnies around. I want realism. I want to tackle the problem. But positive energy is so important. Emerson said, nothing great has happened without enthusiasm. I believe that. The sun is coming up tomorrow. No matter how bad it was today, tomorrow is another day. No, the glass is half full. We can do. The smile is better than a frown. All of those things that sound cliche is just so important because this is a tough business. We work when other people play. And in order to get through it, you need that energy. And you don't want to drain your people. You want to be a source of energy for your people. Teamwork, high quality. And the last one to me that I'll mention is humility. It's an honor to be a leader. It's an honor to serve food. It's an honor to grow people and develop people. It's a privilege. And so that takes a degree of humility to say, we're all people. I look you in the eyeball, and whether you don't get into heaven because you're a CEO, you may get there because you was a good person, you did good deeds in your belief system. And so the humility part is just so important. Values, everything I do because of the value. If I'm asked to be on a board, the first thing I want to know is what's the value of the company? If I join a company, what's the value of the organization? Second one I would say is take tough assignments. It's the risk-reward ratio. I take the toughest assignment because the opportunity to grow is just so important out of a tough assignment. All things are possible, and success can be had in any situation if you apply the right resources to it. But I wanted tough assignments because it demonstrated to those who are making decisions, this person's courageous. They're willing to sacrifice their safety to take on this role. And if you're going to do that, it's important then that you assess the situation. so you can be situational, so you can bring the right tools, the right resources, the right time frame to success. It's important to borrow from the best. It's important to learn from the best. When I left Jack in the Box in '91 and went to KFC, which was owned by PepsiCo at the time, I went from burgers to chicken. KFC under PepsiCo was a very, very performance-driven organization, but a very company-centric. The role I went to was general manager of Upper Midwest out of Detroit. I was responsible for 150 restaurants. It was my first time I had responsibilities for company restaurants, 125 of those, which was similar to what I had with Jack in the Box. I also picked up over 300 franchise restaurants. And it was clear to me that the way to learn the chicken business, there was this great franchisee in Cleveland, Ohio, that ran a great chicken business, Kenny King's, and Don Campbell was the CEO. I went to see Don and I said, gee, I want to come and spend a week working in your stores to learn how to make money with chicken. And it was one of the most important things I did. So if you're going to take on tough assignments, don't sit there and think you have to solve it all by yourself. In fact, asking for help is very important, but learning from the best and borrowing from the best is just so important. If you're going to take on tough assignments, then curiosity is imperative. In fact, one of the key traits that successful people that I've been around, and I've been fortunate to meet a lot of great successful people, one of the key traits they have is curiosity. How does this world work? How does this business work? What is possible? How can we get better? How do we disrupt ourselves? And those examples are just so important if you're going to take the tough assignment. Ultimately, you have to decide where your career is going to be. But you have to understand when you take on an assignment, you don't spend 1 second talking about the person that you replace. You want to understand that situation. But man, I want to focus on the future. I'm not going to criticize. I'm not going to comment. I wasn't there. But I'm going to own it from day one. I may be inexperienced, but I'm never going to act new. And the day you take on that new assignment, that tough assignment, the clock is ticking. So you've got to get to work on the assessment. And depending on the size of the opportunity, it's a 30-day assessment, it's a 60-day assessment, it's a 90-day assessment. When I went into companies, it was 90 days, and I tried to get done in 75 days. And that was trying to learn the business. I used questionnaires, I used roundtables, I tried to engage every part of the organization. I tried to engage customers. I talked to board members. I talked to suppliers. And at the end of that, you get all this information and then you go off with a manager, your team, and say, okay, how are we going to use this information to get better? The power of the questionnaires is that you're getting information from people saying, well, what are 3 things you would do if you were me? And when you start doing that stuff and it shows up, you're like, and they're like, oh, gee, you're changing things. Yeah, but these are the things you said we should change. And so it's important to do that. It's not about you. It's not about you. Success in organizations, my experience, happen at 3 levels: the individual level, team level, and the enterprise level. You start off as an individual contributor, and it is about proving yourself. It is about getting the job done. It is about, can I demonstrate to them I have these skills, I'm worthy to be here? But it's not about you ultimately. If you're going to be a team leader, there's 2 things I think you got to know. You got to know yourself. What are your strengths? What are your opportunities? And you got to manage yourself. What are things you got to do to keep yourself in check? Particularly once you become a leader and people understand your hot buttons, people understand your phrases, they start using your phrases. You can't listen to the noise. You can't listen to how great you are. You can't allow yourself to get puffed up. You have got to stay even. You've got to stay real. I always try to have people around me that I call truth agents that could tell me reality. They have permission to speak the truth without consequences. It was at the end of a meeting, so how did I do? And you're feeling great because you think, why gave it, well, is this what you intended to have happen? Were some of the best coaching that I got. As you grow, you understand success doesn't happen in a vacuum. It never will, and it can't be. Ultimately, it's doing what's right, and it's not who is right. I had an opportunity at Pizza Hut. It's 5,000 restaurants and supervising. I had 6 divisional vice presidents. I was down one Saturday with this one guy in South Florida. He ran all of Florida for us. And I was talking to his development plan, and he's one of 2 people I kind of picked to succeed me. And I was like, if I move on, I want you to be one of the people that compete for this job, and kind of here's your development plan. And I'm going on, and I'm noticing that he has a frown on his face. And he says, I said, you don't seem excited by this great opportunity I'm presenting you. And he looked at me and says, that's not what I want to do. And man, I was so crestfallen. I was like, wow, I spent this time, I spent this energy putting this plan together, I'm trying to get your commitment on it. And a little voice back in my head said, not about you, not about you. So shut up, and asked him what he wants to do. And what he wanted to do was to be a franchisee, to be an owner operator. Eventually made that happen. But I tell that story to say, it's not about you. When you work with people, and what became from my career is I would get to work early. I'd spend a couple hours getting my work done. And then the rest of the day was about how can I help my team? How can I help their team achieve success, removing barriers, asking questions that compel greater success, listening. But it's tough to make that jump. And a lot of times people can get to that higher mid-level position, but if they can't recognize it's not about them, they won't make that jump to the senior level, which is about relationships and working on teams and understanding there's times you lead, there's sometimes you have to follow. And followership is just as important as leadership. And you have to go between those 2 poles from meeting to meeting. Do your best work. Being a minority male, starting off in the late 70s, you can imagine there's not a lot of people that look like me going through my career. I didn't take that any other way to say it other than I had to bring my best work every day. There was no resentment for that. The fact that you have to give your maximum effort was something I saw my father do. And it also, my orientation was that the worst day of my career is the best day he ever had in his career being a laborer. I had a company car. I was supervising people. I kept my own schedule. And so doing your best work was just so important. And so you got to know your stamina. You got to know how you handle stress. And the key to me is understanding that if you can maintain the same attitude, the same behavior, the same performance in stressful situations, when the world is falling down and you're the leader and folks see that you're calm, that's a common effect. Because when you do things out of desperation, ultimately, it will not be your best work. And so always try not to be desperate. I think it takes focus and consistency and mental toughness to do your best work all the time. But it also takes a sense of, how do I renew myself? So my vacations were very important. Twice a year, in the spring, 7 to 10 days. And then our year in the food business and restaurant business, by the time you hit January 18th, the year was done. So I take those last 2 weeks. And except for last year and 2 other years, I would take my wife on international trips. We've been to 154 countries. And that was all about restoration. I'd leave people in charge. Once Blackberries came about, you could do, you didn't come back to a desk full of paperwork, so you could get up early and manage the paperwork thing so she wouldn't get on me. But renewing yourself so you can bring the energy is just so important. Knowing whether you're a night person or a day person, managing those energy levels throughout the day. The worst time of the day for me was like 1 to 3. If I could get through that 1 to 3 period, man, I could go to 10. I was an early riser, so that the early part of the day wasn't a problem. But managing that 1 to 3, and if I was in a car with somebody visiting, going to restaurants, which I did almost every week, there were times like, I'm gonna take a 10-minute nap. And so don't be offended by, I got to renew myself. That's just so important, understanding that. Being vulnerable is part of your best work. So I moved out to LA from Houston, from 8 restaurants to 45 restaurants in Jack in the Box. And LA was just this rainbow of people. I mean, Houston typically, and when I was growing up, Hispanic, Black, Anglo, navigating that, I kind of understood. So I go out to LA and you have folks from Asia, you have folks from India and Pakistan. I didn't understand in the mid-'80s, in the early 80s, why I couldn't put a person from India with a person from Pakistan. I know that now, but I didn't know that then. So I had this young guy who was running this fantastic restaurant. It was doing about 10,000 a week. And I had this horrible restaurant that was potentially do $2 million. And so I go to him and I sit there for 30 minutes and I lay out why he should want to move from this $10,000 a week restaurant to this potential $2 million restaurant. And I lay out where you're gonna make more money, I'm gonna pay you more money, you're gonna make more bonus. You'll go from managing 15 people to 30 people. And just him, no. And out of exasperation, after about 45 minutes, I just threw up my hand and said, damn it, man, I need you. He smiled, looked at me and said, you should have started there. That was vulnerability. That was emotion, that was feeling. And that's what really impacted him to say, okay, I'll go take this assignment. But doing your best work is important. And you've got to determine what that is and what the company norms are. But I do think it gives you a leg up when you decide to do that. And then lastly, what I'd say from a life lesson is failure is a strikeout. Failure is a strikeout. It is literally, when I fail, I'm closer to my next home run. I don't take it lightly. So you admit it, you learn from it, you don't dare repeat it to the same degree again, and then you recover. It's a part of trying to chase excellence. If you play it too safe, you will not achieve greatness. You will not maximize results. Risk-taking is different from being reckless. Risk-taking is promoting someone that might not be quite ready, but you can put them in a situation and put them around talented people, and they can grow into the job. Reckless was once saw this situation where this leader had a new product and it was untested and it was more expensive than the menu. And they rolled out that new product untested with consumers to the whole organization. After about a month, you recognized the folly and it almost brought down the whole organization. That's reckless. So between those two poles of, I want to be a risk taker and not being reckless, you've got to decide. But failure will happen. You can mitigate it by playing the what if game. You can mitigate it by having sessions of saying, how do we need a SWOT analysis of strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? And how do we mitigate the weaknesses and mitigate the threats? You minimize failure by having a team approach. You minimize failure by looking outward, inward. You minimize failure by engaging people and getting new ideas. As a restaurant manager, I played the what if game a lot. Driving to work, if I could think about it, then it's like I can mitigate it. And the worst thing is a restaurant manager coming to work, no one shows up today, what am I going to do? Well, once you work through that problem, you got the rest of the day. You run out of an ingredient or one cashier doesn't show out. Once you figure out what am I going to do to be successful today if no one shows up, then the rest of the day is a piece of cake. And that is my attitude about playing the what if and thinking about pitfalls that can help hinder success and thinking through that. In '08, when we were staring the abyss of a financial collapse, I just joined Potbelly, small company, smallest thing I'd managed in 20 years, but tremendous upside. And there was, what's the disaster plan? If it gets down to 10 people, who are those 10 people? If our sales go down 25%, what we're going to do? And I developed that disaster plan and that 10-person list. And I kept it in my left-hand drawer throughout my whole time there. Obviously, would update it. You get the team input on that. But that was just so important to think that through before you were desperate. Having a disaster relief plan on hurricanes happening, which happened a lot, a region going down, foodborne illness, working out all that stuff, supply chain disruption, working through all that stuff is just so important. So then you're like, here's the list. Here's the people we'll contact. Here's the PR firms that can help us. Here's the government agencies we need to contact. You have a breach of information and security breach. What's your game plan for that? Who do you reach out to? Do you have insurance to cover it? All that stuff to me helps you not have total failure. Personally, I think you learn more from your non-successes than you do from successes. And it helps when you can go around and debrief with the team. These are not all the life lessons I've learned, but those are the 5. The values, they take the tough assignments, not about you, do your best work, failures to strike out. Ultimately, I was tremendously blessed in my career and in my life. Ultimately, my view was I didn't want to build a wall around myself. I wanted to let people in. I was never going to be the angry young man fighting against the world. My fight was always about the inside and can I make it better for me? If I went through something as a manager that was distasteful, then obviously like, how do I solve that when I become a leader of managers? If I was an operator, and so what can I do to make district managers' lives better? What can I do when it comes to CEO to make sure that marketers have a better way to go than the one that I experienced? So that was my career. And how do you open doors and keep those doors open? How do you get a group of people and recognize them? I was in the people identification business, and then how do we get them developed so we can get them to the highest position where they can make the maximum contribution? And that was what my career was about, and had a lot of people to help me be successful. So those are my kind of prepared remarks. I'm open for Q&A.
Okay. Thank you. I don't think I could there and say to everybody that this was absolutely fabulous, fantastic, and I think on belief. And Aylwin, thank you so much. I'm going to have the first question come here from Charles Dorn, one of our members of Eric's Club, and actually he's the vice chair of Eric's Club right now. And his comments were great presentation, very thought-provoking, and a great learning lesson for all of us. Thank you. As the pandemic has been the greatest crisis in our lifetime, what was the biggest crisis you faced in your career, and how did you handle it, and what was the learning lesson from it? And that's the question from Charles Dorn.
Well, the pandemic has been the biggest by far. Before my biggest career was the hurricane, and when I was at Kmart and Sears, and the hurricane had hit New Orleans, and the whole I'm drawing a blank, but I should know this. And I went down 3 days after it hit. I had to land in Mobile because I couldn't land in New Orleans, and that was devastation I'd never seen. And so it was all about taking care of our employees, taking care of our customers, getting as many stores open so we could get generators. And we actually had a very good disaster plan. In fact, it was so good, FEMA came in and lifted our gasoline and lifted our trucks after we had been in business for about a week, and we're okay with that. But that was the biggest. What I would say with the pandemic, your typical plan was if I'm down 20%, what do I do? If I lose a region, what do I do? If I lose a country, what do I do? Nothing prepared you for -90. And what I saw in this industry and on the board, working on the board of Marriott, is that some very talented management teams navigated some very difficult waters. And coming out of this virus, the expansion of technology, customer-facing technology, being able to drive convenience out to customers, I just think it will come back, but it will be different. But the hurricane was the biggest one for me.
The next question is jump to retail. What was that in terms of your career, that biggest challenge in terms of the jumping to retail?
I was the number 2 guy at Yum Brands. And David, I love David. I love working with David. Dave Dino was our CFO at the time. And the three of us ran the company, and it was great. But I wanted to be a CEO. I couldn't stay in the industry because I didn't want to compete against the family, because Yum Brands was family to me. So an opportunity to go to Kmart. It was a $20 billion company out of bankruptcy, making about $1 billion a year in profit. So I did that. 3 weeks later, I get a call from the chairman, Eddie Lampert, saying, we got opportunity to buy Sears. What do you think? If I'd known that, I wouldn't have went, because I thought Sears was just a dinosaur. But we decided, did the merger. And Steve Goodman is the one that sent me a note before he asked me to do this and said, your 3 years was the best of profitability with that company. And I am proud of that. But what was interesting was I took operational, marketing, branding, customer service, culture, and those things were important. And so I could drive that. The learning was this retail has this special group called merchants that are totally different than anything in business, and they have their own class and their own P&L and their own way of doing business. So that was different learning. It was 2 failing businesses that were put together, but they still had opportunities. It was a $53 billion merger. So sitting at the top of that was very interesting. But ultimately, I decided I needed to move on because of the culture around the chairman. No dispersion, but it just, if you want to run the company this way, I'm your guy. If you want to run a company this way, I'm not your guy. And it was all based on values. So decided to leave, left on good terms, and then went and found Potbelly. But it was a great experience. $53 billion company. The best year we had was $3.6 billion in profits in 2006. So
I'm gonna follow up with a question we had about taking Potbelly public. How did that process come about, and can you maybe extrapolate a little bit of some of that great learning you had when you took that company public?
Well, we had, thank you. Listen, we were self-funding. We were very profitable. We'd gone from borrowing money to build in 2008, when a lot of folks was doing that, to we became self-funding. We had 7 different ownership groups, and that just wasn't tenable. So we went public primarily to clean that up, the capital structure of the organization. We didn't need the money, and we eventually returned that to shareholders. The toughest 2 weeks was the road show. We had a good story to tell. The market was different. Spending time with Sears, the market was different my years at Potbelly than my years at Yum Brands, or even before then, where trading was primarily done with algorithms, and people expect you to be perfect every quarter. We missed 1 quarter. The quarter after we came out, we missed, so we got put in the penalty box. The rest of the time, we beat our quarter. Couldn't get the stock moving because people would say our big 2 was 27%. Our formula was it had to be under 30, and yet people would look at the 27 and said, "Gee, but you're 10th over on labor." And you say, "Yeah, but my big 2 is 27 as opposed to 30 that we told you guys." And so it was a different game but we had to go to get clean up the ownership. I actually think growing companies is best to be a private organization, so you can work out the growing pains, and then eventually, when you have the mousetrap figured out and the growing pains over, the teenage years for companies are the worst to be public.
Another question, and this I think goes back to the beginning of your presentation, Alwyn. You started basically in the third ward. What was your specific motivation that helped you get yourself out of the third ward, and how did that, become some of the fabric of your career and your life?
It was mom and dad in church. Never wanted to do it. I saw them sacrifice for me and my sisters, and never wanted to do anything to let them down. And I wanted my life to be a testament to my parents and to reinforce their sacrifice for us and how they cared and loved us. And so that was a prime motivation. After that, education was very important. We faced Texas Southern University, and every graduation, my mom would have us out there in the steps watching the graduation ceremony as a way to say, this should be you one day. And so, we had great teachers. I mean, I didn't have an excuse, right? I mean, so we were poor, but we were rich in values. We were rich in education. We were rich in examples of how to be successful. Barbara Jordan, Mickey Leland were local people here that you could look at and say, this is possible. And I would say growing up in Houston, I've lived a lot of places, but Houston as a city racially opened up in the late 60s, that it was an easier place for a Black kid like me to grow up and to dream than some other cities that I've lived in. And even now, it's hard to dream. And so I'm blessed, but the family foundation is just so important. I can't imagine growing up without a caring mom and a caring father that helps you.
Another question is, you've got so many wonderful success stories, but perhaps is there one thing in particular that's made you most proud in your career, or maybe in your personal life? Well, your proudest moment?
Wow. So career-wise, I think the proudest that I can say is that there are about 25 people that I worked with in my career that are currently either at the top of organizations or own their own business. And it wasn't obvious that was going to happen when you first met them. And boy, I'm not sitting here saying pat Aylwin on the back for that, but it's like, you can look at these 25 people and their success and say, I had something to do with that. And I still talk to about 15 of them. And so I'm very proud of that. The other thing I'm proud of is, one, getting on the board of Disney and being part of Bob Iger's tremendous career and watching the company change. I mean, the big change of going direct to customers happened in a board meeting where we were losing subscription at ESPN. And the guys came in and said, we're just going to have to work harder. And at the end of that meeting, the board said, and it was our strategy meeting, every June we would meet, and the board said, guys, if you don't do something differently, we're going to have a lousy business in a few years. To Bob's credit, he kept the team over that weekend, but at Monday he said, we're going to make the decision, go direct to customers, which is going to disrupt this current ecosystem, media ecosystem. And by late that year, they had the technology, they had the IP that would allow us to go direct to customers. And you look at the valuation of the company today, the fact that Disney Plus is out there is what's carrying the company, even through, the virus hurt a lot of the other things. That was a proud moment for me, of being a board member, working with a great CEO, working with a great management team, and watching it disrupt itself. That was a very proud moment.
That's outstanding. We are getting amazing, great questions, and I wanted to let the audience know we're going to do the best we can to get to them. And thank you, everyone, for your questions. The next question is, can you give any advice to any students or even professionals to prepare for the next future crisis or disaster? What would you suggest people be thinking in terms of those pieces today, as we've come away from not only hurricanes and floods and now the pandemic, some of those preparation points?
I think every situation, doing a debrief personally. So you're personally in inventory of how do I personally survive, and do I have the skills? am in the right position? Do I have the right tools to survive? And that safety net, I'm not one to count on other people to provide a safety net for me. It's my job to provide a safety net for my family. And so I'm going to provide first for my family in that safety net. And then I'm going to try to provide a safety net for my business and my business career. Scale, no doubt, helps when you have crises like we saw. If you're subscale, then you have got to preserve the company by being liquid and having access to capital that will tide you over. And whatever customers you have left, you treat them like gold. Whatever associates you have left, you treat them like gold. And that becomes the new way to build. And it will happen again, but it will be different. But there's some things coming out as there's no way around it. My career was based on a 30-second spot. Can I buy a 30-second radio spot? Can I buy a 30-second TV spot? And that could drive my business, regardless. Now it's so much about interfacing with customer and having that technology and making that easier. And if my app or if my interface is not as easy as the next guy, my competitor, I'm going to lose, just going to lose. And so that's what I think you got to learn. How do you build the moat around you, your career, and then your company?
Next question is, did you ever feel like, and you may have touched on that a little bit during your presentation, did you ever feel like you had bitten off more than you could chew?
Oh, yeah. So, and it was a Pizza Hut gig. So I go from, I'm a chief marketing officer, a year assignment, developmental. But before then, the large group of restaurants I've run was 450 restaurants out of Chicago in that division. I get promoted to a 7,000 restaurant chain. And you're like, oh my goodness. And the day I show up, they walk in with a PR guy that's my PR guy. I get introduced to, here's your special events guy. I'm like, what do you mean, my guy? And so the first month in that job is like, oh my God, I just got to make sure I don't mess up. And one morning it was a Monday morning, I'm driving to work on the tollway, living in an apartment, family still in Kentucky. And it's like, Aylwin, this is a big role, take your swing. Because that's always been my philosophy. I'm not going to strike out with the bat on my shoulder. And so then it's about, the job is big, but you have resources. You've never had resources like you have now. How do you galvanize those resources to do the job that you want to do? But yeah, there was 4 to 6 weeks there. You're like, oh my goodness, what do I do now? But that's the point you have to see. Life is a journey and not a destination. I've seen so many people, I want to get to this position. You get to that position, it's like, oh, here's my destination. For me, life is a journey, and I'm chasing excellence. And excellence, you never reach the pinnacle of excellence. There's always more to do and more to accomplish.
Here's a quick question, then we're going to have maybe a couple more, but a quick question from one of our board members and great Eric's Club members, Mr. Bob Cowan, is how many moves and cities have you lived in since 1977?
So at one point, before Potbelly, I had moved my wife 21 out of 24 years. And so I'd say 18 houses. They all have been brand new. They all have been her dream house. And I've spent more on window coverings and landscaping than anyone in the history of mankind.
How many swing sets did you buy?
No.
Yeah, I did a few of those myself, but not nearly that level. A question here is, in terms of corporate responsibility and service responsibility today, that is a very big thing. And certainly you have been a part of that with so many of the corporations you worked with in developing that corporate responsibility and the completeness that goes with it. Now, we've come a long way since 1977. We got a long ways to go. A couple of thoughts and sharing that for the students today and even our professionals that are viewing.
Listen, I'm pro big business. I don't understand at all the rap that big companies get. If you are an evil company, you're not going to survive. If you don't treat your people well, you don't treat your customers well, you don't pay your bills, you don't pay your taxes, you're not going to have a good ongoing enterprise. I start there. I want companies and I want all artificial barriers that inhibit success for individuals to disappear. My career was about eliminating those artificial barriers where people who want to be successful can't be successful. That's what I want. I want to be a good citizen in the community, which means I'm going to find a cause, I'm going to support that cause. I'm going to encourage my people to support that cause. I'm going to help educate my people if they want to be educated. To me, that's what being a good citizen means. I don't have any other highfalutin attitudes about that. That's hard work to do. I don't want to be political because I want to serve everybody. I'm not red, I'm not blue, I'm people. And the most amazing thing to me is when you have a rainbow sitting around the table that's representative of your marketplace. That's a beautiful thing to see. And that's what I want to work on. To me, it's very simple. You do the right things. You do the right things for your people. And when you're at the top of the organization, it is a tireless effort to make sure you're doing the right things. And your spouse values, you need to behave the way you say you're going to behave.
That's outstanding. I'm gonna a little bit of a pivot here on something, and then I'm gonna have you talk about mentoring, because that was really at the top of your presentation, your mentors. There's a new mentoring program that's starting at U of H, university-wide called Cougs Connect. And I strongly urge every single alum and Eric's Club member that's viewing this afternoon or this morning or this evening, in Lily's case in Hong Kong. The point is, this is a Cougs Connect to be able to connect with students and be virtual perhaps, but at some point we come out of the pandemic, being able to have the opportunity to connect with students or fellow alums through this process. You can sign up now. There'll be more information that's going to be forthcoming from the college as well as Eric's Club. Dean Reynolds is absolutely supportive of this, as well as Dr. Back and the Eric's Club board. So I just want to really emphasize Cougs Connect. Want to shout out to Bob Plank, who's a past chair of Eric's Club as well as a distinguished alum, and he and Charmaine Taylor are going to be honored this fall, two of our wonderful alums in the gala this fall in October. But the question to you, Alwyn, what should a student be looking for in a mentor, and what were the key pieces and how people fell into place becoming your mentors? And this will be our last question, folks, because we're going to be on a time limit. But Alwyn, if you wouldn't mind addressing that question, please.
I think successful people, you look for people that are successful. You look for people who are role models, and don't be afraid to ask. I can't tell you how many, I won't turn somebody down and ask me. And I asked Bob Nugent. I worked directly for David, and I asked Andy Pearson. So ask successful people who are role models, people who have had success. Do you mind? Can you be a role model for me? Can you be a mentor for me? And then it's your job then to make it seamless for them to help. So if you say you're gonna meet once a month, what's the time frame? What's the agenda? And then you make sure you show up and you ask great questions.
I think that's fantastic advice. And one last question that came from Ricky Oberoi, who is our traveler within Eric's Club. He also is on our Eric's Club board. What is your most favorite country you have visited? Quote from a fellow travel junkie. What was your favorite country?
Well, Italy. I love everything about Italy, and it's one place I've gone back repeatedly. But Italy's my favorite country.
I can't argue with that. I love Italy myself. And on behalf of the college, the university, your industry, your passion, your professionalism, and the things that you have dedicated yourself personally and professionally, I want to thank you on behalf of a very, very grateful industry in college for this presentation today, Aylwin. And I think I will have everybody join me and just do a circle of applause here. Everybody, come on. There we go. Or even a standing ovation. And I had pants on. I just want everybody to know that. All my friends, they were threatening me, wanting to make sure I was going to have pants and not just this coat and tie. But Aylwin, I just want to personally thank you for your great inspirational. If you get a minute before you sign off, look at all of the chats and thank yous. I bet we had over 100, 150 comments and questions that came from the audience. We peaked out at over 300 participants today. And so thank you so much. You have any final thoughts for the group? Otherwise, I'll pivot over to Dr. Back.
No, listen, it's an honor. And Richard, thanks to you. Great moderation. And it's an honor to do this. To the students, it's like, don't let anyone tell you what your dreams could be. Understand the price it takes for the level of success that you want to have, but dream big and work hard toward your dreams. And this world is going to be such a great place that you're going to live in and grow up in. I'm so optimistic about what's possible in the future. And do your best. Richard, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We have a chair that's going to be coming forward on the Eric's Club Distinguished Lecture Series. We have a beautiful chair. There's one behind me. I don't know if I can get out of the way. I don't think anybody can see it. It's in my office here. And we have a beautiful chair coming to you as well. And Lisa will help coordinate that. And again, thank you to everybody. Dr. Back, can you unmute yourself and get us ready to go into our breakout session? So again, thank you very much. And Dr. Back, of course, is the Eric's Club Distinguished Lecture Chair. And we sure appreciate you taking this on. And please go forward, Dr. Back.
Yes, thank you so much for wonderful, very inspirational presentation by Mr. Lewis. This is great. We learned a lot from you. So once again, thank you so much. So, and thanks to all the Eric's Club members who put this event wonderfully and to support our college. Right now, we are going to take a very short break, but for those of you who wants to stay in this site, please, you can actually join the breakout session. There are 4 concurrent sessions, as you can see from the screen. Once you click the button on your breakout session, you can join in one of those 4 areas: operations, financial and development, corporate social responsibility, and what else? Just out of blue. But you can choose one of those 4 breakout sessions to meet with wonderful Eric's Club members. So please take a great opportunity. But once again, this is a wonderful event. I just checked the final number of the registered participants, 459. So this is the unbreakable record, but maybe we can break the record next time. But this is wonderful. So feel free to joining in at this point, and then maybe you can just mingle with the panelists while we wait for 11:30 session. So once again, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. And Dr. Back, thank you for coordinating and sharing this. And we'll see everyone at the bottom of the hour. Thank you again.